In this week's episode of StudioInter, we'll be reviewing the Derby d'Italia defeat against Juventus with Serie A commentator Marco Palmieri. We'll be doing a quick review of the Bayern game, previewing the Bologna and Atalanta games, this week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog, and much more. Everything on StudioInter on the SempreInter.com. Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of StudioInter. I'm your host Nima Nerazzurri, welcoming you to an episode where we are far from happy after a week where we were, or a month where we were absolutely all smiles. The last week has been anything but good for Inter with two defeats, one starting with the Bayern game, which had no impact at all. It was pretty much a glorified friendly, and Inter stood up really well there. But there was some controversy involved there, and we're going to talk about that. But above all, the Derby d'Italia. But before we get to all of that, let me begin by introducing my panelists, starting with SempreInter.com preview writer Mr. Mohamed Nassar. Mr. Positivity, not so much, I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, the wheels haven't come off, so it's okay. It's always, I was just telling you offline, it's always terrible to record the podcast after a loss. But it is what it is, so let's discuss this. And great episode coming up, I hope.
Absolutely. We have a lot to talk about because we have to talk, but we'll get into everything. Also joining us today, he writes a column he writes a feature every week on SempreInter called 5 Things We Learned from Inter This Week, Mr. Jake Smalley. One day I will learn how to pronounce your feature properly and not mess it up, I swear. One of these days.
Well, I'm just glad you could say my name properly, actually, because that causes a bit of some people. But yeah, good to be back this week, and I'm a bit angry, if I'm honest with you. So this will be a bit of therapy for me, so I'm looking forward to it.
Good, because I think I'm not exactly happy either. I think any Inter fan is happy. And we are joined by our good friend in Toronto. He's a good friend in Toronto. He's a producer at TSN and our in-house refereeing expert, Mr. Michael Gallo.
I'm not as angry as I thought I would be today. Usually after Derby losses, I'm usually a mess. But for some reason, I have some type of positivity in my mind. I don't know why. I don't know what this feeling is. But, hey, it's what can we do? We lost to Juve. No one likes this. But we got to move on. And there's still a lot of positive things to think about this year. And excited to talk to all of you again today.
For sure, because that's it's funny you mentioned that, because that's exactly how I feel as well. But we're going to get to all of that. But before we do, I want to introduce our guest. He's a very special guest, a very good friend of the show. He's been with us through the years many times. He's a commentator for the Serie A World Feed. Welcome back to StudioInter, Mr. Marco Palmieri.
Thank you very much, Nima. What a great introduction. Good to be here.
Well, we're very grateful that you always make time for us here on StudioInter. So let's get right into the Juventus game. It was a game. I'm gonna ask you, Marco, how you think. But basically, my reflection is this: that I don't know how many times I think I've said this about Inter, or we've seen this about Inter, and that is that it's a game where Inter, in big games, whether it was Milan last season, both Serie A derbies, whether it was Real Madrid, whether it was Liverpool, whether it was Juve even in the first game at home last season, or etc., or Lazio again last season. I mean, it's a repeated theme. Inter create chances, they miss sitters, and then end up losing or dropping points, especially this season. Now, that's less true when it comes to the Lazio and Milan derbies, because they were kind of outplayed in those. But it's absolutely true against Roma, and it to some extent the 3-3 draw against Barcelona too. I mean, what is happening here? Is this Simone Inzaghi's Inter, or is it just that the players he's got lack the killer instinct, and of course Romelu Lukaku's injury being a part of that?
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there, but let me attempt to give you at least my opinion. I don't know on the state of affairs at the moment. Okay, you said we are creating chances, and that's true. Inter definitely creating chances, and you've got to say that that's a positive. It'd be a lot worse if we weren't, and last night proved that, against a very timid Juventus team, I think Inter should have been 2-3-0 up at half time. You've got to take those chances. There's no question, especially I think I'm referring to Dumfries, I'm referring to, Dzeko and then Lautaro to a certain extent. But, when your scorers aren't scoring, I guess last season when that was happening, the good part was there was no leaking of goals. That'd be pretty sure that the defensive department would help them, and a goal came eventually, or they'd probably draw. Like Inter haven't drawn yet this season, apart from Barcelona. That was a pretty, shall we say, sour draw given the circumstances in the final minute. But I think that the big games are, of course, the problem, and I think Inzaghi definitely has to address that. But having said that, they've lost, all of the big matches this season. Only the Roma one, I think, is the one where he can really be, truly, have a lot of regrets about. It's the only one that was at home. It was the one where, Roma did very little. The one, 2 chances that were afforded to them were scored, and in front of 70,000 people at the San Siro, that's just not acceptable. Against a Roma side that weren't particularly creative and were pretty much all over the shop. So I think Inter definitely need to take heed of the fact that they are still creating chances. They are still entertaining, because they've been playing some incredible football. Last night, I guess the strikers weren't on target. Barella probably not as flamboyant as we're used to seeing him so far this season. He's been quite outstanding in the form of his life, I've got to say, but that wasn't the case last night. And then Juventus were, they're clearly growing in confidence, especially after that counter attack. I mean, that goal, the opening goal, changed the match, and I think Inter were at fault, but you can also say that Juventus played a pretty amazing counter attack, and that that comes from a lot of training ground work, and they finally realized that they can put together a decent move, and it paid dividends. And then the fury of having that disallowed goal probably pushed them even more to search for a second. And Inter's reaction, I guess, wasn't really what we were used to seeing. There was the shot from Lautaro, which 9 times out of 10 I think he'll score, but the frustration set in, and Inter were made to pay the ultimate price last night with the second goal, which basically killed off the affair.
I want to talk a little bit about Lautaro Martinez because he's a player who I think, it's quite clear that he's supposed to be the main man at Inter now, and it's obvious that he is, and he's supposed to shoulder that responsibility. And I think technically, technically no one can say anything about him. I think he's one of the most gifted players in the world, technically, and certainly in the Serie A. And he's the only player, I think, one of the few players who consistently this season has been, if not world class, then world class adjacent. But one thing that is his problem, and has been throughout his career at Inter, is that his cynicism in front of goal, the lack of clinical finishing, the fact that he needs 3-4 chances to score 1 goal, that is a problem. And I thought last season, especially towards the end of last season, from April onwards, that he'd kind of turned a corner there, and that he was becoming this kind of bomber that I personally never thought he could be. But I feel that now, even though he's playing really well this season, and he scored more than he used to, he scored I think 6 or 7 goals in the Serie A already, it's still, given the amount of chances he has, he's not as efficient. do you think this is just this is just more of a part on his, this is just another path, another step down the path of him becoming the finished product? Or do you think that maybe, at the end of the day, Lautaro maybe not be maybe he isn't the prolific goal scorer we all expect him to be?
No, I've got to say I disagree. I think Lautaro is quality, and I think at the moment the only really problem the only thing that you could criticize him for is consistency. And he went through that minor patch of 4 or 5 matches without a goal, and that's obviously a bad situation for a striker. But it's not just the goals that he contributes to Inter that make him such a quality player. I think he just has that tenacity, that aggression, that willingness to always make up for a mistake. Is the first person to try and recover possession if he's been at fault for losing it. And he carries that, and he transmits that to the rest of the team. And Inzaghi recognizes that, and that's why he's a regular starter, and that's why he should be a regular starter unless he's injured. And of course, this season he's got more to play for because he's, maybe today or tomorrow, I think the team comes, the national team selections are going to be made, and he'll be a part of it. And the World Cup is obviously on his agenda. But no, I think Inter need to keep him. They'd be silly to to lose a player of his ability, I think, at this point. But yeah, no, he does have to address this consistency issue. And I mean, after the return match in Barcelona, I think that was the moment where everybody thought, oh, he's back. Oh, finally. Okay, the Lautaro of old. I mean, he got like 8.5 on the score sheet, the Pagella, as they call him here. I mean, it was such an impressive performance, and not just because of the goal, but it was outstanding, and he backed that up. It wasn't a solitary performance. I think in the next couple of games he showed what he was capable of. Last night he took a step back, but and in a big game, so it's an unfortunate moment, but the opportunities will be there for him to show what he's made of. And Inter really need to wait for that partnership to be, of course, re-sewed together between himself and Lukaku. Who knows when that's going to happen? But
I was going to say,
they need to be patient.
Who knows when that's going to happen with Lukaku's injury problems, which is a big reason why I think Inter's results have been as they've been. I'm going to hand you over to Mo. Mo, did you have a question for Marco? Then the floor is yours.
Yeah, hi, Marco. Again, always great having you on the pod. You are the voice of the Serie A to us internationals. So,
thanks a
always
lot,
great
man.
having you on.
Cheers. Good
anyway,
to be here.
So my question to you is, who's got a higher ceiling now that we sit here at after the Derby d'Italia? Do you reckon that Inter have a wider margin of improvement and are more likely to achieve that margin, or do you reckon that Juve have a higher margin for improvement and are more likely to see that potential? So it's a two-parter. Who's got the most potential? Who's likely to fulfill that potential come the end of the season for both teams?
Okay, I'll start with Juventus. I think they have a lot of potential to come back when you consider, the players that will be coming back after the break, the likes of Pogba, Chiesa, if they're lucky, and I think the fact that Allegri has had this opportunity to show some of these younger players off and give them a lot more running time than they otherwise would have had, it's going to help them, when the schedule is a little bit more hectic, when they play in Europa League. I think they really need to try and win that competition. I know it won't be easy, and a lot of people rubbish it, but they're Juventus. I think Barcelona are probably the only team that they've, that they may struggle against at this point. But I think they can improve a lot more because they hit rock bottom. They really did. I haven't seen too many Juventus matches this season, but the ones I saw were atrocious. They lacked ideas. They weren't creating. They were quite slow and lethargic. And obviously Allegri was getting a lot of slack. And he's been able to, to a certain extent, prove the critics wrong after last night's performance. And put aside the Champions League debacle, that was obviously, to enter his own admittance, an absolute debacle. But looking forward, I think they were able to get some of the mindset that was missing from some of their players, back on that winning way. And last night was proof of that. And so I think Juventus, I think they have more of a margin for improvement. I think they play Lazio next week, and so we'll see. That's going to be a big test, and I think if they win against Verona, which I say they would, that might be a top of the table clash that would see Juventus go level with Lazio, a team that just beat Roma yesterday. So it's a weird season. It is, isn't it, with this whole break, and who knows what's going to happen. I think people are really, just afraid to say what the outcome will be after such a big break, and who's playing in the World Cup, and will it do them good, and will they be rested, or was it better to play? And so yeah, I mean, can you just imagine a lot of the Inter players that just be playing friendlies for a month and a half, and the continuity isn't going to be there. So anyway, I mean, there's a lot to consider, but ultimately it's an abnormal season, and no one can really know for sure what is going to happen after the break. As for Inter, I think I wouldn't throw everything away. I mean, last night wasn't great. Sure, they're struggling against the big teams, but they've got at least 4 out of those 5 teams that they've lost against were away, so they can at least look forward to getting a bit of revenge at San Siro, which is always a big factor. And also the defense away is so much weirder. And how on earth then they their defense be so different away from home than it is at home. But that's a factor that Inzaghi has to address. I think I'm not quite sure what the statistic is, but I think out of 18 or 19 goals they've conceded, I think 16 of them have been away from home. So I mean, it's pretty atrocious. So yeah, I think it's not all bad. I know they're a long way away from the top of the ladder, but they also have a thing called Champions League to look forward to. And if we saw that the draw today was particularly favourable. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. There are never easy games, but I'm sure they prefer to play Porto than Liverpool or PSG. So I think it was a pretty good draw for Inter. And if they get through that round, I mean, confidence can really help when when you're in those final stages of the Champions League. It may spill over into the league, and so you can never say.
Certainly, you really can't say. I'm gonna hand you over to Michael. Mike, did you have a question for Marco? Then the floor is yours.
Marco, I'm used to hearing your voice on all these games on a consistent level, and I don't think I don't know if maybe you're just not doing Inter games or just the games that I'm watching you haven't been doing. But have you, your schedule wise, have you been not doing that many Inter games, or how has it been? Has it been limited compared to previous seasons? Because I remember the last few years, I would be hearing your voice on a consistent level almost every week. But this year, for some reason, I haven't heard you that much. So I just wondering what's going on, and hope what games you've been doing, and how's everything going with that.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I don't pick the matches, but I'm happy to do the ones that I do. It's always a privilege to be on the mic and try and help the games sound better than they actually are, I guess. But I don't know if that's possible sometimes, but we do our best. I did one intermatch. I did the Udinese Inter, I think. And but no,
I try to forget that one. That's probably
yeah,
why.
exactly.
I have to say, my favorite Marco of yours, commentary of yours, is from way back. I think it's 2008, 2009, when at the Olimpico, when Zlatan Ibrahimovic does that Scorpione, the scorpion pass, and all of the Olimpico is like, and you just your reaction was at that moment. Your reaction, we were all Marco Palmieri at that moment. Your commentary was excellent. It was like saying you just laughed and said no words, no words. Like it was just insane. You remember that?
Yeah, I think I do. I know. I mean, it's difficult to. It's you got to try and relay, I guess, what you feel, and sometimes you can't really do that at when you're watching a match on the screen. It's a lot better when you're actually at the match, and we've had the privilege of doing matches from the stadium for a few years, and so I guess we see what we can do. I don't know. It's it's not an easy job, but for me, it's also a hobby, I guess, that I have been able to pursue. I have a regular 9-to-5 job, so it's probably one of the reasons that you don't hear me as often as you do. I tend to just do the one game a week, and if they're desperate, I guess I'll help them out with another.
You're being modest now. You're being modest now.
No. So I'm doing the 2 Roman teams next, actually, to finish out the year in style. So I've got Lazio on Thursday against Roma, and then what did I say? Lazio Roma. No, I'm doing Lazio Monza, and then Roma. I think on Sunday afternoon at 3. Yeah, so that's it. They're the next ones on my plate, and then I'll get my weekends back, which would be great.
Yeah, you can watch the World Cup.
Exactly.
Marco, are all your games? Are you doing them at the stadium, or are you doing any F2?
No. Well, there's the International Broadcast Centre out at Lissone that has been built a couple of years ago, and the games are mainly done from there. All the Serie A matches, anyway. There's the Italian language commentary, the Arab, and also us doing it in English. And we've it's a nice team that we got together. We're all very happy with what we're doing, and maybe one day in the future there'll be possibilities to go back to the stadium, because
would be amazing.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun traveling all around Italy and visiting pretty much every stadium. I do go to a few stadium matches to commentate every now and then, mainly in the off season, for friendlies and the like. I did Udinese at Chelsea this season, actually, which was a lot of fun, from the Friuli, the Dutch Arena. But the Serie A, it's a bit more of a hassle to get to the stadium.
I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you. Right. Yeah, I want Jake, if you had a question for Marco, then the floor is yours.
I was quite enjoying listening to that, actually. I as a former commentator myself, you've almost got my dream job, to be honest with you. So it's quite good to sort of listen to how it sort of works, really. But I've got a really simple question for you, actually. I've just been thinking about it a little bit. Do you think that Inter can still win the league or not? Is it totally over?
This is the question I was hoping no one was going to ask me, I got to say. Because after last night, a lot of people were asking that question. It's a long way away, isn't it? The summit of the table at the moment, when you look at how well Napoli are playing. And I think it's a lot to ask for. It really is. But as I said before, for those reasons, this season is one of those, strange ones. No one's ever had this kind of break in the winter before, and there'll be a January transfer window as well, which could impact some clubs. Maybe Napoli get better. I don't know. Is it even possible for them to play even better than they are at the moment? It's a real tough one, Jake. I wish I had a simple answer for that simple question, I think. But it's a very tall order. So I think it's probably more of a no than a yes. I know that's not
I
what you
think
want to hear, but I mean, hey,
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think the number of points needed to recover is just,
well, it's
I mean,
11 points now, but if you think about the
Yeah.
competition, okay, we still have to play Napoli twice, so that in theory could be cut down to 5 points. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of those things, really. We'll see.
For sure. And the first game back from the World Cup break is Inter Napoli.
Yeah, big Wednesday night. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'll be going with
Exactly.
Sheridan. Actually, well, Sheridan.
We had Sheridan. We actually had Sheridan on last week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
Yeah. No, we'll be trying to brave the cold and get out there.
yeah. January San Siro is freezing. It's just freezing. Right. Before we let you go, speaking on that. Speaking about that particular subject about Napoli and Scudetto. Do you think that they will win the Scudetto? Who do you think will win it?
Ooh, yeah. At the moment, there's no competition as far as I'm concerned. I think just it's incredible. Their best player, Kvaratskhelia, was missing on the weekend against the nearest side on the table to them, and they they overcame that massive setback, and it's like and Elmas played the game of his life. So yeah, no, I think Spalletti is killing it at the moment, and not just in Italy. The European form has been outstanding as well. And at the moment, I mean, we'll see. Maybe Sarri's got some magic up his sleeve, like he did against Roma. Some tactical brilliance that he can pull out of his pocket and figure out a way to beat Spalletti. But at the moment, there's really, I can't see anything but a Napoli win. But everybody keeps saying, oh yeah, but Napoli do this every year, and especially the Napoli fans who are very, very superstitious. Yeah. It's like no, let's not talk about it. But at least they are enjoying their football at the moment. They are a delight to watch, and yeah, and maybe this year, because there's 2 starts to the season, maybe they'll do it again. But yeah,
we'll see.
All to be seen. It's a great
Absolutely.
Serie A competition though this season. Anyway, I think there's some quality matches to be seen. And I think when you look at last night's, sorry to interrupt, Nima, but the Roma derby was a bit of a letdown. I got to say, the Juve Inter match was pretty much a mirror image of it. If Roma and Lazio, kind of started well and then just faded off in the end, there was just no chances at all. And the opposite can be said for the Juve match, where the first half was pretty much just Inter dominating and not scoring, and then the second half was end to end. So yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed the Juve Inter match a lot more than I did the Roma derby. That's just personal. Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it was a better game, but the atmosphere at the Stadio Olimpico was just unbelievable. It's something that we've seen this season in the Serie A, which I really like. The fact that the fans are coming back in droves.
It's so true.
And we're seeing capacity crowds, pretty much all the. I mean, Napoli, Roma, Lazio, Inter, Milan, not Juve, of course, because they've not. Their fans have been depressed for most of the season. But
yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I saw a stat about how Lecce sold something like 60% of 60% of their stadium capacity in season tickets. So I mean, it's been a fantastic season.
And the traveling supporters. I mean, a lot of the Lecce supporters travel really well. Salernitana, they're incredible.
Salernitana, absolutely.
I mean, there was really, I think it was 1,500 Lecce supporters that went to Udine on Friday night. They're the furthest away as far as geographical positions in Italy are concerned. From Lecce to Udine, it's a long way, and yet they all came up. So yeah, no, that's good to see, definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on, Marco. And if people want to find you, where can they find you on social media? If you're still on Twitter and so on, and you did mention which games you're commentating, so I won't ask you again.
No. So yeah, I mean, if Twitter is still alive.
Well, it's been eventful.
I know. Well, I think it's the only social media I've got at the moment. So it's standing on its last legs. I think he's going to run it to the ground pretty soon. But if you still manage to send me a message.
At this point when we're recording it, it's still alive.
It's still alive. Okay, good. Okay, well, we'll see how many weeks that will last. But it's Marco 27. Pretty easy.
Thank you so much for coming on, Marco. We'll definitely would love to have you back on soon, and take care of yourself.
No worries at all, Nima. Thanks a lot, everyone. Good to speak to you. Ciao.
Take care. Right, let's talk about a little bit deeper about the Juve game. I want to talk a little bit about Denzel Dumfries as well, because I think this it has to be spoken about. We know what a technically limited player he is, but that sitter to me is it's not as bad as Gagliardini's against Bologna, but to me that, and in descending order, that's the worst miss last night. That conditioned the game. And then you go to Edin Dzeko, who it's not his fault at 36, 37 that he's a starting number 9 at Inter, but he plays in slow motion. And it's his control of the ball was atrocious. And he's so slow. And then of course we have Lautaro, who had 2-3 chances where he only got one on target. He is I think, of course nobody wants to sell Lautaro. We think he's a world-class player, but I do question I'm starting to have doubts whether or not he ever will be the main man in an attack, or if he's one of those players who is at his best when he's got another person next to him who is the main man. I'm keen to hear what you think about that, Mo.
Look, I think we've spoken about Lautaro before. I think we disagree. I agree in that. I think he needs someone next to him. He's not the sole number 9 at all. His physique, his style of play, his positioning, all lends itself to him playing off of another taller striker, target person, maybe. But that doesn't mean he's not the main man. I think I'm with
Marco.
Yeah, with Marco and with the general consensus. I think that, and I think also you're not writing him off. But
No.
I really do believe that he's a very special talent, and maybe it's not going to be translated into 30-ish goals or 25 plus goals a season. But I think he can hit over. I mean, in the league alone, but I think he can hit 20. I think his ceiling is 20 to 25, and if he does that for 2 or 3 seasons, still, it'll be a very, very strong showing for Inter. And yeah, no, I rate him. I rate him a lot. And yeah, do you want me to talk about the Dumfries as well, or?
Yeah, or I want to hear what you think about that. I mean, it's not much to say because it's.
I just look. I agree. The guy is technically limited. I think he's an amazing player. He's the best right back we've had since Maicon, Hakimi, and Cancelo, notwithstanding. Because they truly are world-class players, and we were very lucky to have both of them for just one season, but they were never really ours. So I think he's definitely the best right back that we've had, right wing back, right whatever. I really feel bad for him because that miss yesterday, the screen grab on Twitter that's been doing the rounds, really doesn't do it justice. He did really well to get to that ball, and he's not a striker, so I feel bad. It's a terrible miss. Of course, it's a terrible miss. Had it been Lautaro or Dzeko in that position, it would have been egregious. It would have been absolute, scandal. But I really think he's hard done by that screen grab. I loathe him more for putting himself in that position than the miss, which is very unfortunate. But like you said, it kind of really set the tone to the game. Once he missed that ball, this is not Inter's night. It was one of those nights.
They don't call him Mr. Positivity for nothing. Right. I wanna ask you, Jake. I mean, you did say before the game you were angry. So please feel free to rage away.
I'm really glad you brought this up actually, because I've just been reading over my piece before we came on, and I've absolutely slated Denzel for his. So I'm really well, maybe not slated. I had to doctor it a little bit. I'm going to be honest. I thought he was an absolute sitter. I've been at the time I was angry, and I think I listened to some of the comments that have been made. When been discussing it with Marco, I think it's really clear and really obvious to see that Inter's problem in these games come down to the substitutions the manager makes sometimes. He makes a few tactical errors. But it's down to the fact they can't score. There's no brutality. If you look at the way that Inter performed in the Scudetto winning season, the players scoring all those big chances was Romelu Lukaku. You took him away last season. They had the same problem last season in the derby games that ended up sort of twisting into the season and cost them the league title. And this year they just can't score big goals. Lautaro missed two pretty basic chances, but Denzel's, I wonder sometimes if, on one day, if somebody hadn't watched him and persevered with him, would he even have been a professional footballer at all? Because the way he runs sometimes, his touch of the ball, is vile. I mean, I rate him as a player. I see the qualities that he brings. I'm not trying to, for one second, disrespect him in terms of his ability. He's offered a lot to Inter. I think in games he's looked good, but at times, at his worst, he looks woeful. One thing that I've picked up on in my piece is what really frustrates me a bit about him yesterday is his tendency to drift inside. When Juve was sitting back, you think, Denzel, you're absolutely rapid. You've got strength. You're very direct when you get running with the ball. Just be brave and have a run. Instead, he was getting the ball to his feet. He was bouncing off him a little bit. He was turning around and passing it back, killing the impetus. He just looks woefully out of form to me. I genuinely would just take him out of the team for a little bit. And I think it might not be popular, but I'd potentially look at putting Darmy on there for a couple of games, or even give Bellanova a bit of a shout. So I think where he's concerned, it's a bit of a sort of a call into sort of moving back. And you talk about Dzeko, but you sum it up really well there, Nima. I think he's almost a victim of circumstance. If Lukaku was fit, he wouldn't be playing. He'd just be a squad player, because on the ball, I mean, it's like he's running through treacle. He's so slow and cumbersome, and it costs into breaking down attacks. I said after probably the hour mark, just hook him, get Correa on, because as much as he's a good threat in the box, in the air, and he can finish. He's proven that even this season. He's just such a hindrance to a team.
For me, it's like, sorry to interrupt you, but like, I think it was. Do you remember? I think it was the cartoon I'm referring to is Zootropolis. Do you remember? Do you remember those sloths who are working in the Department of Motor Vehicles? Like how that's how Edin Dzeko moves on the pitch. It's in ultra slow motion. It's, I mean, compared to the other players, that's how it looks. It's genuinely painful now. And I'm reading. I don't know how much to put into these reports, that they're seriously considering extending this man's contract beyond when it expires this summer. That's lunacy.
Yeah. Well, especially when you think about the wage that he'll be being paid as well for a player who hopes, next season, Lukaku aside, Inter have got to buy a Premier striker in the summer. Whether they bring Lukaku back or they bring
Marcus Thuram, for the love of God, Marcus Thuram, the player Inter should have bought if he hadn't gotten injured, and would have bought had he not been injured, and we wouldn't have to deal with this glorified futsal player / asado chef / webcam model named Joaquin Correa standing there and annoying me every goddamn game. So he's the player Inter should have bought, and now he's turned into one of the best number 9s in the Bundesliga. He's scoring for fun. His contract expires in June. Move heaven and earth to get him. Like, that's all I'm gonna say. And let Lukaku go back to Chelsea. I'm sorry. I'm glad we got into that, because I wanted to ask you. I'm sorry, but I don't think we'll ever see the Lukaku we saw under Conte at Inter. I honestly don't think so. I think we will see. I think he'll score his goals, but he'll never be that player again. I mean, I think it was Sheridan who said last week that if you take into consideration how many years he's played football since he was 15, 16, I think it was, I can't remember. And then you take into and you think that it's been like almost 14, 15 years of playing at that high level. That takes a lot out of a body. And I don't think, I hope I'm wrong. I hope this comes to bite me in the ass, but I don't think I am. I have serious doubts whether Romelu Lukaku will ever be able to play at the level he played at Inter those 2 seasons before he moved to Chelsea. I honestly have serious doubts about that. And I wonder, and that's why I'm thinking, cut your losses, send him back to Chelsea, not your problem. It's a paid loan, you don't have an option. Send him back to Chelsea and bring in Marcus Thuram. Go all in on Marcus Thuram. That's those are my 2 cents. What do you think about that, Michael? Mike, what do you think about that? And also I want to hear your take on the Juve game as well.
I don't like. Look, Lukaku's been injured, so I don't want to speculate what we should do until we get Lukaku back after World Cup and see where he's at. See how he does at World Cup, and then I would make a more a better decision at that point. Look, he's injured right now, so and before he was injured, and I think he wasn't at the level he was at 2 years ago, but potentially still. Close to that level. Now, I will say is that a couple of years ago when we won the Scudetto, Lukaku, the way I looked at it was 2 out of every 3 games, Lukaku would have a good game, and then that 3rd game he wouldn't have a good game, and Lautaro would always pick him up, and that's what I thought Lautaro was. He was that perfect complementary striker, and has he done well as the guy the last 2 years? Not as much as I would hope he would be, but he's done well. He's kind of like the player where he's like a really, really, really good striker for a mid-table club, but like he's a good striker for a very good club if he's the guy. So that's where I kind of stand on that. I want to see them play a little bit more after World Cup together and see where they're at. Hopefully Lukaku's healthy. I don't think we're there yet. As for the Juve game, quickly, what I'll say is, look, we had those 3 chances that should have, one of those chances has to go in. And if you're not going to score one of those chances, then you're not going to win the game. I'm not going to really blame Lautaro because, it was a really good shot. He just missed it by a couple inches. I'm not really going to blame Dzeko for his missed chance because, it was deflected right before he went to head it. So it's really hard to kind of change the motion of your head when you're getting given like, a tenth of a second to kind of change that motion. So I don't really blame him, but I'm going to blame Dumfries. Like, come on. I don't even know what the hell he was even doing up there playing like a striker almost. Like he's playing on the wing and he's literally a center forward. I don't know if it was like, I was trying to watch it back again and figure out how the hell he ended up there. It would have been nice if it was someone else, because I'm sure 9 of our other players would have scored that goal. But yeah, come on, you gotta put that in. I know he's not technically gifted, but still, that really once that happened, I kind of had that bad feeling in your stomach that you've had these 3 chances already, and you're probably not gonna get another one like this. And sure enough, that's what happened. And then, as good as Barella has been the last month on that the Juve counterattack, he was horrible on it. Like he should have
fouled him. I understand that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's when you take the yellow card, take the tactical foul.
I'm not sure if he's like he was on a suspension, or I don't know what his card count is right now, but that is a classic. Just grab his jersey. Foul. Because he not only did he lose possession right away, but he didn't follow. I think it was Kostic.
Kostic outran him. Kostic outpaced him. That's how that counter-attack started. Yeah.
And once you realize that's going to happen, you just take the foul at half and take your yellow card and move on. And he failed to do that. He's been great for us the last month. I know he had a really slow start to the season, but he really picked it up the last 6 weeks. And I expected him to do better, and it was a kind of a mental error for him not to stop that counter. So look,
remember the Euro 2000, the Euro 2020 final, Chiellini on Saka. Like, come on,
just do something to stop. If you don't have the pace to stay with him, then you have a job to do. That's something that I know playing soccer in men's league in Canada. Like, if a guy's going to get past you and you are seeing,
you don't let him go past you. I'm not saying do anything like physical, but pulling his shirt, pulling his jersey, like Chiellini did to Saka, like that.
take it like so too. Why don't you?
Jesus Christ, Mike. No, but seriously, like be a bit more furbo. That's the thing I like. That's what I wanted to get to as well. And it kind of segues into the next question. I wanted to start with you, Mo. I feel this Inter lacks a bit. They're nice boys. They're nice guys. There's none of that. Sorry for my French, but the dickhead. There's no dickheads in this team. There's no mean bastards in this team. Everyone's like Simone Inzaghi. They're good boys. They're good people.
We
Do
need
you know what I
Materazzi.
mean? Yes, the Materazzi, the douchebag, that that stops it, that other teams are afraid of, and I think that's a reflection of Simone Inzaghi.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying this from the very beginning. My critique of Simone Inzaghi is that this guy, I don't know if he has the killer instinct to really, or the desire to do anything for a victory that is required of a manager to win the league. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are some bad boys on the team, but I think the general attitude of the squad is, let's go into our job and not be cynical about it, and let's play good football, and that's all that counts. And it doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it. There needs to be an edge to the side. This is the Inter DNA. Whenever we've won because we were a physical, strong side that outmuscled other teams. Were tough at the back and just cynical. There's no cynicism.
No, I mean what I mean by like Materazzi, Cordoba, Zlatan when he was at Inter was a horrible. He was a dickhead, but you wanted him. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like this is what I want. Lucio was a giant douche on the pitch. Like these kinds of players and I feel Skriniar is great and he works hard, but they're all nice. They're too nice. There's no. You need to have this guy that everyone else fears. The Roy Keanes, the Vieiras. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not just physicality. It's also attitude.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is what it is. Right. I just briefly, just before we go on, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about, Simone Inzaghi, immediately Simone in, Simone out. I mean, I don't want to rehash that again, but because there's no point. We're not, Inter can't afford to sack him, and there are no options, viable options there to replace him. But I do wonder if this could be the last season we see with Simone Inzaghi at Inter. Whether if he feels that, either you back me or I'm out, or if if a new owner comes in, or if they just decide they want to go in a different direction. I don't know. I know he just signed a contract extension, but I don't know. I'm starting to feel that I don't want it to happen because I think it would be a mistake. But do you guys feel? I'll start with you, Mike, and then I'll go to Jake and Mo quickly. Do you guys think that this could be the beginning of the end for Simone at Inter? I certainly hope not.
I hope not. I think it depends on what our finishes. If we miss, say, Champions League this year, then I would agree. I think that is very possible. But say if Inter kind of rebalance and they finish second or third, I don't think it's realistic to go for. I mean, to think that Scudetto is going to be a realistic goal at this point because of how well Napoli's playing. But if Inter rebounds well and they finish second or third and are at least in that conversation and they're not losing these big games down the stretch, because we've lost pretty much every big game this year so far. So if he can rebound and at least make the ending respectable, then no, of course not. I think we stick with it and rewrite it and we keep going, because I hate breaking. These projects take time. They're not things that you just do over 1 or 2 years. You need like 3, 4, 5 years to kind of see things through, because you just don't build things overnight. So I've always been someone who likes to stick with a coach through the bad times and let things go. I don't, unless like we finished like 6th place and it was just an embarrassment back to the Europa League, then I think we would consider that an option. But at this point, I would just give it till April until we a little more clear in our heads.
Quickly, Jake, Mo, starting with you, Jake, about Simone. Like, what do you think?
It's almost as if you've sort of had a bit of a read through my piece before I've actually even had a chance to even sit. Upload it.
I haven't seen it. Honestly, you've not sent it to me, have you?
No, I've not.
No.
It's the second thing now, but no, it's a bit of a funny one. I can only see it going wrong from this point. I think an early departure of the Champions League, if Porto were to beat Inter, and and Inter have a really bad sort of run in the league, I think he'd go before the end of the season. I really do. I don't see any sort of notable replacement. There's no one I look at and I think, yeah, definitely get him in. There's no one I'd replace him with. I don't really see the point. And the picture around the club is so much bigger for the reason why things have not really gone to plan since the Scudetto win. I mean, for me personally, that should have been a platform to see Inter go on and sort of hold their own at the top of the table. Inter should have won the league last year. They've got a better squad than Milan. It's simple as that. This season, I don't think they should be that much further away either. They should be really challenging for the title. So they are underachieving a little bit, but part of that is down to the fact that the recruitment's not been brilliant. I do think a little bit parts of the squad are slightly stale, perhaps as well. That would benefit from a new coach, perhaps. But it's anyway. I could talk about this for ages. I think Inzaghi himself, I'd be happy for him to stay, but I really do think there's a sort of distinct possibility that Inter will be a manager in the summer. I really do.
What about you, Mo? Do you think that this could be the beginning of the end? And I'm not saying that he should be sacked or will be sacked, but that they will part ways in the summer. What do you think?
I think if new ownership comes in, then for sure. My problem with Inzaghi is I am not getting. I think I have the biggest bone to pick with Inzaghi amongst all of us, despite being the optimist here. My problem with Inzaghi is I don't know if he has a clearly defined project with goals attached to it. Like, I don't know what he wants. He's not a Conte or a Mourinho or whoever, where I'm here to win trophies. We must win our trophy. He hasn't come out and said I want to win a trophy. He hasn't come out and said our goal is to win a trophy. Victory is not what he's in for. He hasn't told us he wants to create a winning cycle. He hasn't told us that he's rebuilding the team and his own vision. He's got this footballing philosophy. He hasn't done that either. And he hasn't come out and said that there's a certain style of play that he's looking to implement for a certain reason. All he's done is come in, implement a very nice, interesting kind of football that's a bit more free-flowing than Conte, and just gone with the flow. So this is my biggest bone to pick with Inzaghi. He needs to stand for something. He doesn't stand for something. And ironically, when we get to the Moratti of the week, I'll tell you what my Moratti of the week is. But at this point in time, this is my biggest bone to pick with Inzaghi. So if new management comes in with new funds, as long as Marotta's in charge, I hope that they bring in a manager with a clear identity, or sit down with Inzaghi and allow him to freely express himself.
Yeah.
Maybe Inzaghi is constrained by the financial realities of the club, that he's not able to communicate a certain vision that he'd love to emulate. I don't know.
That's a really interesting point. That's a really interesting point. Because Di Canio was talking about that Inzaghi's communication yesterday on Sky Calcio, that his communication, he doesn't like his communication with the players.
Yeah. So that's where I stand. I think I'm probably the most amongst the four of us who would be okay with parting ways with Inzaghi as long as a replacement comes in. I definitely don't want to see a Tuchel or a Klopp or any of those new fancy managers come into the club. These guys are not Inter DNA, Ugly football.
Conceição or Juric.
Conceição. Yeah, the dream is always Simeone. Let's see, but I don't know. I think Il Cholo needs a new project.
Yes,
he's definitely trying. Yeah, it's getting quite stale at the Metropolitano. So that would be a match made in heaven. We want to talk about dickheads and assholes.
Are you kidding me? Yes. Oh my God. Are you kidding me? That man I die. Look, I pray in the church of Cholis. Everybody knows this. You don't need to sell El Cholo to me. Are you kidding me? I mean,
but this is what I mean. Even if there are financial constraints on the club, Conte went out and threw a tantrum, an entire fit after achieving the best finish for Inter. He knew he had delivered the goods. Europa League final, second in the league. He came out and threw a huge tantrum, put the management on on check. You get me this, you get me that, or else I'm going. This sucks. This is absolute, And Jang had to come in and fly and do the appeasement treaty, and lo and behold, we win the Scudetto next season. This is what Simone Inzaghi lacks. He lacks an identity. He lacks. He doesn't stand for anything. He stands for nothing.
No, he's too much. I know what you mean. He's a little bit too much of a company man.
You watch the autogol cartoons of Simone Inzaghi, right? Yeah, I mean, it's always hey, grazie mister, grazie, €1. This is Limone,
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. He's a very, that's true. But I just want him to be a little bit more assertive. I actually think that tactically and footballing wise, he does stand for something. I think the problem is his communication. I think communication is he's not clear in how he wants to communicate. He's not clear with the players what he expects of them, I think. And I think a lot of the hesitancy comes from that. And I think he needs to improve, because when you're coaching at the top level, because I think he is a top class coach, I think communication is incredibly important. Right. About the Bayern game, there's only one talking point, and I want to go straight to you, Michael, about that, because there's been a lot, Sadio Mane's handball. From what I've understood, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Sadio Mane, the ball hits Sadio Mane, clear and simple. He protects his face, clear and simple. It hits his face. The VAR asks the referee to look at it because they think that the ball, because of the hand movement towards the ball, there's that it should be an offense. But the law of the game also states that if you protect your face as a reflex, it's not an infringement, and it doesn't take into consideration the distance of the situation, even though they talk about a player being close to a situation. Can you explain a little bit on that?
Yeah. So what happened here was it was a shot where Mane is trying to protect himself. Okay, I think we can all agree that's what he's doing. So like the intent of that situation is that he's not trying to make himself bigger to prevent the ball from going towards target. We know that, and I think that's very important here. So the distance is less important than the reaction time for how long Sadio Mane has to react to it and make a decision of what he's doing. And it's not that long. You could try to look at it real time. It's, I don't know, you're talking about milliseconds here. So it's very, very hard for him to get his hand out of the way of where the ball was going, especially because he was just trying to protect himself. So when you are looking at handball, there's, the important factors are reaction time, which is very important. And obviously he didn't have that much reaction time. Was he making himself bigger? No, he was not doing that. And what's also very important here is that what happens with the ball if it doesn't hit his hand. And I think what the referees decided, and it looks like what the referee decided, what he was making a gesture of after he made the call, was that if it doesn't hit his hand, it's likely going to hit. It's going to hit his face. So there's no advantage of the ball hitting his hand. So that's very important too. The only thing that you could really argue on the other side is that he did move his hand towards the ball after it was kicked, but there's almost no reaction time. It's not like he was trying to prevent a goal or anything. So there's just too many factors against it. And as much as I would have loved to have Inter get a penalty there, I mean, if this game meant something, maybe my biasness would have came into play, and maybe I'd be more mad. But as soon as it happened, I was, thinking right away, there's no chance he has to really prevent himself from doing that. Any type of defender would do the same thing, and his hands were in the same size of his body. They weren't outstretched. So I think the referees made the right call here, and what can you do? Like, that's just we've had some bad decisions against us, but I don't think this was the wrong one.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say about that. And on the topic of the Champions League, Inter have drawn Porto, and that's obviously the main talking point. And I mean, it's probably, I mean, for me, Benfica would have been I would have preferred Benfica, because, as I said, I mean, I think Sergio Conceição and his style of football don't suit Inter that well. I think Inter struggle against teams that play that deep and that compact. and I think that's the only thing. But other than that, you can't have any complaints, surely, Jake. I mean, we can't have any complaints about that draw. And I want to go to start with you, and then Mo, and then Michael. Just what chances do you give Inter to go through?
They got a really good chance of going through. I think one thing that is worth mentioning as well is that they have the home tie first. I think that's really important. With the away goal rule not having a factor anymore, if you can start well, get a comfortable sort of cushion, it makes the away tie a little bit easier. I think, I watched the draw live today, and I've never really done that before, but I had a bit of free time in between teaching pupils. I hope none of the kids are actually listening to any of this. Just been marking their books, really. But no, I did. I watched it live, and I looked at the teams that Inter could draw, and I thought, well, let's try and avoid some of the big boys. And they managed to do that. You don't want to see them playing PSG or anything like that. So, we did that last year, playing against Liverpool, gave a good account of themselves. But ultimately, I think it will be real progress to see Inter go beyond this round of 16 stage. I've put at the end of this week's piece, I'm really plugging it this week, aren't I? But I've put at the end of this week's piece that is a top 4 finish and progressing to the quarterfinals and beyond the Champions League a good season. It's worth questioning. I think they've got a really good chance of getting through. They couldn't have got a much easier draw. Not that there is such thing as easy draws, but they were very favourable. I think a promising start. 2-0 at home. I'd really fancy them to progress.
I think that's fair. I think it's a 50-50 tie personally. What about you, Mo?
I was just going to say 50-50.
Ah, great minds. What about you? And I mean, it's impossible to say now. The game's going to be played in February. It's just, but I think just looking at this, I think it's 50-50. But on a personal level, I would, Mehdi Taremi, Iranian striker, the best Iranian football player of all time, if you ask me. And of course, Serge Conceição, who I have a ginormous bromance with. So yeah, I would have liked to avoid them. But what about you, Mike? What are your thoughts?
Don't forget about the Canadian on Porto named Eustachio. He's actually pretty good too. So I mean, he's not a huge name. But
Representing Canada.
Yeah, we've been watching him we've been watching him a lot the last year or so, and he's been playing really well for them. So I know him very well, and it's going to be really exciting to watch Inter play against him. I would give them slightly
a Canadian and an Iranian. This is not it's not a good thing for both of us.
Yeah, it's a weird. I mean, he's Portuguese, but he's he plays for the Canadian national team and everything. So it's I've watched him play a lot. I mean, do we really have to play against Pepe? Like, oh my God, the guy's a 40-year-old defender, and we're going to be playing against him at the back there. So that's going to be really, really interesting. But I think I give us a little bit better of a chance, maybe 55-60% chance at going through. But I mean, look, we've had some really shit draws over the last 10 years.
Yes.
So listen, we got a really shit draw in the group stage, and we powered through it. So let's take advantage of this and get through the challenge. I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't have mind playing against a Liverpool or Tottenham, just because I fucking hate those teams so much, and they're not. I don't think they're as good as PSG or Real Madrid and City. Those are the other 2 options or 3 options that would have been horrible. But I mean, Benfica and Porto were really our best options, and we got it. So let's take advantage of it and do something. Actually, make the quarterfinals. All the Italian teams are still alive in Europe, so let's do something about it. And hopefully they all keep going on right now, and not just Inter, but everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Before we go to the Moggi, Moratti, and Frog of the Week, we got to talk about the upcoming games. We've Bologna at home. Look, if Inter can't win that game, then we've got. I mean, there's not much to talk about. Bologna are a decent side. Marco Arnautovic, we know what he can do. He did it against Inter. In that infamous game, Radu Gate, as it's come down in Inter history as. So I don't want to dwell too much on that. I just think that's going to be an easy 3 points. But I do want to focus on the lunch match game. Lunch match game away at Bergamo against Atalanta. Away, big match. Direct rival. And does anything, Mo? Now you got to work for your Mr. Positivity title here. Is there anything that suggests at all that Inter can even get away with a point at Atalanta on a lunch match game at the Gevis on a Sunday?
So, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No. I think ultimately the game in Turin was not that bad. I think the first half Inter played quite well. I think it's going to be a draw. I think our trips to Bergamo haven't been as shitty as they historically have been as of late. I can't, off the top of my head, this is just a gut feeling, but I remember Inter doing quite well in the last 3 or 4 seasons, uncharacteristically compared to historically when it was one of the most torrid away trips. I hope that the team is slowly really building something up. I think clearly the Bayern game should not count or factor in any sort of form or macro sort of calculations. And the Juve game was a blip. I mean, had any of those chances been scored in the first half, something would have, for sure the result would have ended up differently. So I kind of maintain some semblance of optimism here. I don't necessarily think that we're going to win, but we could easily come back with a point at least, and that could be enough to break the duck of big away games that we lose. So that's what I'm hoping for. A win against Bologna, scoring win, hopefully a clean sheet. Onana gets his confidence back, and then at least a draw against Atalanta.
Give me a prediction for Bologna and Atalanta then. What's the result and who's going to score?
Let's say 2-0 against Bologna with Lautaro Barella scoring, and then a 2-2 against Atalanta. Brozovic finally gets back and scores, and Correa just for you.
Nice trolling. Jake, what about you? Bologna and Atalanta. What are you thinking?
Well, before I get into this, if there ever comes a time in my life where I'm about to be sacked from a job or I receive some serious terminal illness news, please can Mohamed Nassar be the person who delivers that news to me, because he makes everything seem better, nicer than what it is.
Mr. Positivity.
I just laughed to myself then when he started talking about the Atalanta game, because I have absolutely no faith in that game at all. I really don't. I think a draw would be a really good result. I think I'm never going to predict Inter to lose, because that's not human. I can't do that. But I think a high-scoring draw might be a possibility, given the way that Atalanta like to play. I think a 2-2 draw in that game, I do. I think Inter will show some battle, because I think they'll beat Bologna quite comfortably. It'll give them a bit of confidence. They'll beat Bologna 3-0. Pretty straightforward win, but it's going to take a lot for them to beat Atalanta. I think the game yesterday wasn't a bad performance. Like Mo said, I think Inter are probably better than Juve. It's simply the fact that, Atalanta is so full on, so full of energy. They're getting into his face a little bit. And, I like what you were touched on before, Nima. I don't think they've got the chops at times and the real sort of nous and grinta, to borrow that phrase, to fight to win games like this. So I'm going to be optimistic, and I think 2-2 draw, and I think they'll beat Bologna quite comfortably. I think they'll win 2 or 3-0. I'll say 3-0.
Love that. Mike, what about you?
Well, let's look at Bologna first, because their last 4 games were they beat Torino, they beat Monza, they beat Lecce, and they gave Napoli a good run, probably almost as good as anyone else this year, where they were actually they lost 3-2, but they played them really hard. I remember watching that game. So they've got 3 straight wins, and then they played Napoli very well. So let's not think this is going to be some pushover. Let's take it easy here. Worry about one at a time. I don't think it's going to be a pushover. I think this game's going to be 2-1 Inter. But I don't think when teams on a run like this, it's no team to be really taking lightly. So I think that game will be a little bit harder than what it should be. But as for Atalanta, I was actually going to say 2-2 with you guys. So the only exception would be Gosens comes on off the bench and scores a late equalizer, hopefully against his old team. So that's I think they're overachieving a little bit, Atalanta, this year. I know how good they've been the last 4 or 5 years, but I think they're overachieving just a little bit. But I agree
with that.
I'm just like, I'm not. I feel like they've lost they've lost these really good players that were so important to their team, and they really just keep on getting the same results. So I'm just a little confused on why they keep on doing this. Maybe it's Gasperini. I don't know, but I think they're just overachieving. I don't expect them to finish top 4, but I think they're third place right now. So just give it some time, and they will crash down to earth and play in Europa League next year. But I do think this is it's our last game before World Cup. So hopefully, and I really hope, and I'll get this into Moggi afterwards. I don't know what the expectations are from these World Cup teams with having their players being rested beforehand. I don't know what. I think we've got a handful of players playing at the World Cup, and Atalanta might have a couple as well. But I don't know what's going to happen with resting players in their last game. But hopefully, we won't have to do that.
No, for sure. There's no way that that's going to happen, and the clubs would lose it. No, I can't imagine that would happen. Bologna, I agree with most of you. We've got to win that 2-0. I think Lautaro will score, and Dumfries as well try to redeem himself. And then against Atalanta, I'm praying that I don't think we're going to see Lukaku before January, but I can't see Inter winning that. I think it's going to end in a 1-1 draw or a goalless draw. I just can't see Inter winning that. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. Right, let's move to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something heavily in the world of football, starting with the positivity, which will be presented by this week's Moratti, which will be presented by Mr. Positivity himself, Mr. Mohammed Nasser.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person all these qualities.
Yeah, so after railing on Inzaghi for the bulk of my talk through the episode, I think actually, and contrary to what Di Canio was saying on Sky, was it? I can't remember, but I think for the first time,
it was Sky.
One of the losses against the big teams, I think for the first time, Inzaghi showed me, he still didn't get worked up and angry, but I liked what he said. Let's not speak about luck. We need to do more. For the first time, I felt like this guy is dissatisfied with just playing well. We're playing well. So for me, despite the result, despite me blaming him ultimately for the state that the team is in at the moment, I think maybe this is, this like a seedling or a sprouting of something from a seed of something that might develop into a bit of a backbone for Inzaghi that can then transform this team for the second part of the season. So that's my Moratti of the week, his post-match interview.
I love that because that part absolutely resonated with me as well. When they said, "Don't you think it's bad luck?" It's like, no, I'm not going to say that. We just need to do better. I don't like to talk about bad luck. We just need to do better. I love that. I really like that as well. Right, let's move on to something much more negative. This week's Moggi, which we presented by Mr. Michael Gallo.
All right, so everyone knows I'm from Canada, and I already just brought this up with you, mentioning Eustachio on Porto about Inter playing Porto. And look, there's something, we're really excited in this country about playing in the World Cup for the first time since 1986. Back in the day where we scored 0 goals and got 0 wins, didn't tie a game, and Canada has been waiting 36 years for another chance to get back into the World Cup. I was born that year in 1986, and I wasn't able to enjoy it. And now Canada is back in the World Cup for the first time. But it comes at a very difficult kind of situation because the World Cup is in a different time. It's not in the summer. It's in the middle of the club season, which I don't like because we've got too many things going on with the club seasons taking a break, and it just doesn't make any sense to me because I literally had nightmares about player injuries on clubs going into the World Cup because there's only a 2-week break. I don't think that's sustainable, and I think in the next week or so we're going to have some bad injuries. Normally, how long would we get for a break after club season? We're looking at before the tournament starts. I don't know, maybe a month, something around that. And sure enough, I literally had a nightmare about Alphonso Davies getting injured like 3 months ago, and I woke up and it was just like a bad dream. Sure enough, what happens against in Bayern's game on the weekend? He gets a hamstring strain, and now he's got to race against time to get ready for their first match. And I know Bayern has come out and said that it shouldn't affect his status for the World Cup, but I just don't like the fact that this is happening so quickly after important club matches, and we've still got some to go before the break starts. I don't think this was a good idea to have just this short of a break going into the World Cup and having these players, going through such rigorous, important matches, and then, hey, the World Cup starts, the most important part of your life, in 2 weeks, and you've got hardly any time to train with your teammates and stuff. And Davies won't be the first, and he's not going to be the last. There's going to be injuries in the next couple of weeks that are really going to affect World Cup availability, and I really wish they could have done this better and not scheduled it the way it is. Maybe they were handcuffed with the heat. And Mo, you probably attest to how it gets over there with heat in the summer. You can't play. I get it, but there was better ways to do this, and our country would have been a disaster should he suffered a more serious injury, because he's our best player and the best player in his position in the entire world. And who knows how this thing is going to progress? But I really hope that he's fit and FIFA can really avoid a situation like this in the future.
For sure. Right, let's move on to something much more comical. This week's Frog, which we presented by Mr. Jake Small.
È clamoroso! Autogol di Ranocchia!
So, this week, this might provide some really good inspiration for you, actually, Nima, for your podcast. I think, well, as a member of the English footballing world, I have to often live my life through quite a tough period. I don't know. It's hard being a football fan in England because the levels of idiocy seem higher than in other parts of the world. Maybe it's just me. I'm sure every country is the same. But
but you're in the media, in the British mainstream media, some of the dumbest people I have ever encountered work, like with high-profile jobs, undoubtedly. Especially on radio, and they talk about football. It's astonishing.
Well, that leads me nicely into this week's Frog. I was going to go with Arsenal fans blaming a pigeon for Aaron Ramsdale conceding a goal. I was going to go with that. Because
that is really such a Frog thing. That is such a Frog thing.
So Arsenal fans were having a bit of an angry moment on Twitter, thinking that Aaron Ramsdale was too busy watching a pigeon to stop himself conceding a goal. That was a very Frog moment. But I want to give a real big shout out to two of the best pundits in world football, I'd argue, on TalkSport Radio, in Jermaine Pennant and Jamie O'Hara. So two gentlemen who finished their playing careers playing for Billericay Town on what is essentially park football, who thought in their wisdom to have a sort of, a bit of a psychoanalysis of the career of Gerard Piqué. With Piqué retiring this week, it's been a hot topic discussing his career. Both men were keen to point out that he played alongside the likes of Victor Valdez, Carlos Puyol, Dani Alves, Lionel Messi, Sergio Busquets, basically the whole Barcelona team except himself. So, he was apparently a really terrible player because he's never played in England at any sort of successful level because he barely played for Man United. So, I had to get that out there. Every week I go on.
I just want to give a shout out to Kevin Hatchard, who's been on this podcast before. I think it was last during Conte season when we played Gladbach, and he's a German football expert, but obviously covers all football. I want to give a big shout out to Kevin for maintaining his cool and not laughing in the faces of these people when they went on these tantrums. And I said as much on Twitter as well, like, well done, Kevin, for not losing your cool and also not laughing at the absolute gibberish and drivel that was being spouted at a remarkably record-breaking rate, given. And I'm taking into consideration whose mouths it was coming from. That particular duo is very good at spouting nonsense, and that was. But I wonder if they didn't particularly break some sort of unofficial, TalkSport record, which would be, of course, a world record. But it was astonishing, and it was genuinely bizarre, because Gerard Piqué was not a passenger at Barcelona. But Gerard Piqué was, during his peak, one of the best central defenders in the world, especially ball-playing central defenders in the world. We're not talking about Simone Padoin, who's got 3 Serie A titles for playing for Juventus. We're talking about Gerard Piqué, who was a starter for Spain and Barcelona, and was a world-class player at his best. So, I'm amazed at that. Utterly amazed at that. The level of ignorance that they display, and they do so proudly as well. It's like, if you'd said Victor Valdés, I'd understand, because I never rated him as a goalkeeper, and I know many people didn't. And yes, he was lucky to be born when he was, and he was a decent goalkeeper. He was from Barcelona. He played for one of the best football clubs and one of the best club teams of all time. That I would have understood. But to go after Piqué is just okay. So what? I mean, it was just a weird. But I mean, at the end of the day, we know the thing is, I don't think they're that. I have to be honest. I think it's more cynical than that. I don't think they are that stupid as they make out to be. I think it's more to do with the fact that they know that if they say something stupid and they do it on camera, it's going to go viral. Everyone's going to comment on it. I think they're doing it on purpose. They're baiting people. I really think that. And of course, I took the bait as well. I'm admitting it. But I think that's what it is. I honestly think it's shock jock, the radio. That's what it is. It's let's say something outrageous just to get the interactions out there.
I'm getting sick of it.
Which to be honest, it's becoming more and more in mainstream sports coverage. Unfortunately, that's becoming more the coverage. It's not journalism anymore. It's turned into like some sort of
clickbait.
It's turned into clickbait and like the lowest common denominator level of entertainment. Do you know what I mean? Like it's almost like like one-liners at a cheap Las Vegas show kind of level of entertainment that it's become. It's not analysis. It's not intelligent. It's not interesting. I mean, yes, things can be. The best thing ever is if they're informative, educational, and entertaining. I don't think they're either. I think it's just shock value. Let's say the most outrageous things we can just to get the interactions out there. And social media, of course, because you can measure, so quantifiably measure how many interactions something gets. That's why, and they measure their success that way, not what they've actually done, which is pretty sad, to be honest, but it is what it is. Right, that's all we had.
Serie A is always better in this aspect. For me, being an English football fan, be able to listen to some of the Serie A coverage, although it is sometimes recorded on transistor level radio technology, you don't get this same comeback, do you? So,
no, it is what it is. Right, that's all we had time for this week. We've done almost 80 minutes, or we have done 80 minutes. There was a lot to talk about. There was a lot to unpack. Champions League draws, Champions League losses, the Derby d'Italia. Lots of things that we went through. We will be back next Monday. It will be our last Studio Inter for the year, because obviously there's no games until after the new year. So it'll be kind of like our mid-season finale, we'll call it, even, where we will be talking about Bologna and Atalanta, and we'll be doing. We'll hopefully have a really good guest as well. But until then, I'd like to thank Mo. He had to rush off. I'd like to thank you, Jake.
No, thank you as always. Great to be on.
And you, Mr. Gallo.
Thank you very much for having me on. Very nice to talk to everyone. Nice to hear your voices, and looking forward to 2 games this week. We're really excited.
And Mr. Marco Palmieri, who was joined us on the top of the show. Until next week, I'm your host, Nima Rutsari, wishing you to stay safe, listen to your health authorities, take care of each other, 6 points, and sempre e solo forza.